Welcome to the Advantage Insights podcast. My name is Carol Wellaway, and I'm the founder and CEO of Advantage HCS, a healthcare consulting company. Our team is made up of passionate healthcare industry professionals, and together we are on a mission to transform healthcare. Through our Advantage Insights podcast, our team, as well as occasional special guests, discuss current challenges facing the healthcare industry. So let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Advantage Insights podcast. My name is Carol Wellaway. I'm the founder and CEO of Advantage HCS. We're a healthcare consulting company, and our team is made up of passionate healthcare industry professionals. Together, we are all on a mission to transform healthcare. Through this Advantage Insights podcast, our team is able to discuss current challenges within the healthcare industry. So let's get started. I'll start by introducing the fabulous folks that we have with us today. Dr. J, why don't you get us started?
All right. Hey, everyone. I am Allison Jordan. I am a physician on this Advantage HCS team, and I am boarded in internal medicine and psychiatry and culinary medicine and hospice and palliative care. So on this team, my role is an advisor that focuses on communication, health and wellness, coaching, and team dynamics, and leadership.
And Danielle, what about you?
Hi, my name is Danielle Davis Hurd, and I am a healthcare financial consultant and a hospital advisor with Advantage HCS. My background is mainly in financial planning and analysis and helping complex and dynamic healthcare sectors. My experience is in financial management, budgeting analysis, forecasting, strategic planning, and variance analysis. And my interest is always to drive financial excellence and strategic growth with any healthcare organization. And I'm happy to be a part of this organization.
Happy you're here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Andrews. I'm a board certified emergency medicine physician. For the Advantage team, I serve as advisor for emergency medical services, physician coaching, and leadership development.
Awesome crew with us today, obviously. So today we're going to tackle a very interesting topic. This is something we haven't talked about before, but definitely has been in the news lately. And I think we'll go ahead and start with a clip. How did we get here? That's going to be the question that we're going to try to answer today.
Doctors and physicians' assistants at a hospital on the east side walk out of the emergency room, and tonight they are on strike. Thanks for being here with us for the news at 6. I'm Kimberly Gill.
And I'm Damon Fernandez in for Devin Skillian tonight. The strike at Ascension St. John Hospital is not just a matter of money. The main focus, working conditions.
Victor Williams is live there now. Victor, the union for those striking doctors is claiming there's a lack of properly trained workers in the emergency room.
Yeah, Kimberly and Damon, that's exactly what the union is saying. All of these doctors and physicians have been out here since about 2 p.m. It's something that you just normally don't really see. These doctors in white coats actually out here on strike. They stepped right outside of the emergency room and then right onto the picket lines.
Stand up! Stand up! I'll tell you, a lot of tears were shed this morning. Nobody wanted this, but we're begging for help.
Medical professionals literally walking off the job, starting by taking strides right out of the hospital.
We're striking against unfair labor practices, and some of these practices, granted most of these practices, directly affect patient safety.
The strike comes from a breakdown of negotiations that both parties saw coming. Just 10 days ago, physicians, doctors, and others with Ascension Hospital giving notice that this would happen.
Currently, they have all the doctors locked out. What it says is that The people with the most power in the hospital, and that's your doctors, are standing up for the people that maybe can't stand up for themselves.
Allies from multiple unions also joining in to show their solidarity. All agree there are a few problems, but the main one seems to be a lack of properly trained workers in the emergency room, which ultimately leads to longer wait times for patients.
We've had enough. How many more patients' lives do we have to put at risk by being short-staffed, by having 16, 17-hour wait times, by letting these patients sit out there scared? How much longer are we going to take this?
Now, Ascension, Michigan sent us the following statement saying service here will not be interrupted, which reads, quote, Team Health has a comprehensive contingency plan in place with the hospital that would ensure these contracted provider services and safe patient care will be uninterrupted. Emergency medicine physicians and mid-level providers staffing our emergency department are not employed by St. John Hospital. Emergency medicine physician and mid-level provider services are furnished to St. John Hospital through a contract with Team Health. So once again, guys, this is the scene right outside of the hospital. We'll see how long it's going to be taking place. Victor Williams.
Wow. Okay, Victor, thank you.
All right, that's a lot to take in. What do y'all think? Let's start with our emergency medicine physician and leader, Dr. Andrews. What are you feeling? What are you thinking?
This is probably one of those times where I have more of an emotional reaction than a logical reaction because I know what that feels like. And there are a lot of different ways that we could have gotten there, or a lot of systems are on their way there. And I think, it essentially boils down to the thing that we were talking about as a group before, and that is communication. But I was sitting there watching her and I thought back to one of our first podcasts when we were talking about how do we keep these systems running. And it's maturity on both sides to have open and honest conversations about what's needed. And that is an obvious breakdown in communication. I don't know which side of the table is broken, but it's broken. And unfortunately, the people who suffer are not just the providers, but more so the patients. Because now you have your in-staff or in-house physicians now picketing and not in the emergency room, the people who know this system well, who are fighting to make it better. And you're going to bring in contract labor, which is not a bad thing. I mean, you need providers to take care of these patients, but you're bringing in, I say to my residents all the time, you're bringing in baby docs and baby nurses to try and take care of this problem. And they're entering a system where they don't know how it works. And it just causes more of a backlog. And the only person in this equation who has the most suffering is the patient. And it's sad to see.
Wow. Wow. Well, Danielle, from an administrative standpoint, when you see this, what are you thinking? I know you wear a lot of different hats too. What's your response?
I just think that one thing is that some of these contracts, I think what people don't understand is some of the contracts that some of the hospitals and the facilities hold are some of these evergreen and these multi-year contracts that have never been reevaluated. And some of them are so old that they are going by the old contract language. And some of them needs to be reevaluated. And you need to look at those and say, what is are there some deal breakers in there that we've never looked at and we've never looked at? And sometimes it's just, you're going by the same idea that you've done over and over. Well, if you're putting in the same effort, you're going to get the same out of that. And so I think that someone's got to take a step back and say, wait a minute, do we need to look at these contracts? Is this the right language? Are we making sure that we are doing this and abiding by not only the physicians, but the community as a whole? Because as we said, it's a disservice to not only the physician, but to the patient themselves. Like, what happens to them when everyone's going around arguing and upset and not looking at the bottom the bottom line of this. We're talking about patient lives. And so sometimes I think we do have to peel back some layers and understand what's really going on. Is it the communication? Yes, that's one of it. But is it that we haven't really looked at some of the paperwork and the documentation of what's holding some of the doctors there, and what are the rules, and has something been broken before this even happened?
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Dr. Jordan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is a really unfortunate situation, and I just think about, people who have dedicated their lives to helping others, having to walk out of a place where they are literally walking away from patients, literally walking away from the people that they care about. But it's speaking to a bigger issue that because they're not receiving the care that they need, they can't provide the care in return to the patients and that community. And that is really unfortunate. And so, you know, they're trying to have this call for help, bringing attention to this situation, because when they walk out, one of those things that we worry about is, are they never going to walk back in that building? Is this kind of an environment, these kinds of situations, you know, having a healthy team, healthy crew, and if these negotiations, if these things break down and we lose these people and they never come back in, like what Dr. Andrews was saying, um, retraining a whole new group of people who maybe don't know the community, who don't know that hospital system, that don't know the culture, that's going to take months and years to rebuild when that knowledge walks out the door. So, as Danielle was saying, there's another cost here. There's going to be another cost behind the scenes of recruiting, retraining, and doing those kinds of things that hasn't even been thought about. And then the cost in the community of this, how is this hospital going to be perceived if people aren't getting along? Is everybody going to be talking to each other for my care? Is the right hand going to know what the left hand is doing? Do I feel safe being in this hospital? And again, just really unfortunate that it got to this place.
I agree. I agree. I think one thing that struck me, and I've obviously watched this video a few times, but hadn't noticed as much until this time, was one of the physicians saying, we're speaking up for our colleagues who maybe don't have a voice. And the fact that this really seems to be a lot around nursing. And it made me think of times during COVID, and I was in a couple different hospitals during that time, but the same story was playing around the country, and speaking with physician colleagues around the country, and physicians really finding their voice and finding a way to stand up for the patient, and for other healthcare providers. I remember hearing stories of nurses being told, you can't wear a mask, you shouldn't wear a mask, you're scaring the patients. And physicians being told, well, you shouldn't be wearing a mask because you're scaring the nurses. In one hospital, physicians were pooling their money together to order N95s for the nurses. There were meetings and lots of discussion about, we're in and we're out. We've got these PAPRs on, we've got these N95s that we're not taking off. But the nurses didn't have that type of support or the ability to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. In some cases they did. I think there were news stories made. A nurse, a mask was ripped off of her, and said, you don't need that. So all kinds of crazy things were happening through that time. But I did hear a lot of stories of physicians saying, no, this is important and we want to protect not only the patients, but these nurses who spend the majority of their day with the patients one-on-one. So, I mean, your silver lining and something good that came out of this, I bet that relationship between the physicians and the nurses is probably a lot stronger as these nurses are watching the physicians walk out on their behalf.
I think that's true. I also worry that it also makes the divide between hospital administration and the patient caregivers that much wider. Because I think we talked about this before when you talk about those people who are on the front lines. And this is something that I struggle with a lot early on in leadership. And that's trying to find that happy medium between administration and a bedside physician, because the two do not speak the same language. What makes sense on paper when it comes to finances doesn't necessarily make sense at the bedside. And, I think that that's where we as a team have a bigger advantage, because, the four of us sitting here can have that open and honest conversation, and kind of help to get to the resolution. The other thing that I saw in the video that kind of made me interested is that these are actually unions that are fighting for these changes. For those of you that don't know, Advantage is based essentially in the South. Depending on who you talk to, some people think Texas isn't the South, but I digress. Traditionally, we do not have unions. It is highly frowned upon for anyone in the healthcare profession to be a part of a union, because the first thought is, well, you're just doing it for the money. And the truth is that this clip shows you exactly that they're not doing it for the money, because, we're in a profession in emergency medicine. I can't speak for my other colleagues. And that is, if I don't clock in for those hours, I don't get paid. If I don't work my 10, I don't get paid. If I work 8, I make 8 hours worth of pay. If I work 6, I get 6 hours worth of pay. And that's just it. I don't get any more or any less. And so by walking out, I now have put myself in a financial negative. Not that, we're living check to check, but, I don't know anybody's financial situation, but it just shows you that these physicians and these nurses are not doing it for the money, because if they were, they would stay and continue to get paid for being able to do what they deem is subpar care. And the fact that they took that financial hit, I think, should show their community that they really want to fight for them. But I worry that it may have the opposite effect, because they're going to see this as a disconnect, as Danielle was saying, that, we're not a cohesive team. And we have to find a way to make it that. So that we can continue to make the team grow and give these communities the solidarity that they need to ensure that their healthcare is top notch.
Absolutely. Good points. And I think, Dr. Jordan, you spoke too to what are the patients seeing, because we obviously have very different eyes when seeing something like that. And our response is, we're thinking from all of the healthcare hats that we wear. As a patient, I think you all are exactly right. It would be very concerning. If I watched that and my loved one was in that building, I would be calling to say, how can we get them somewhere else? And that's not a place that we want our communities, definitely not where we want our patients, who really should be focused on getting better, and their families to be worried about something like this. I think that's a really good point. So let's talk. I think we've talked some about the patient view and about potentially the nursing view, the physician view. Let's dive into more of the administrative leader. And I'd like to talk more about, again, we are not in Detroit. We are not a part of this current dispute. And we're really using this as an opportunity to talk through how these things can happen, why these things can happen, and some things that might be put in place to prevent them. So again, taking on the hat just of the information that we know of the situation of the physician leader, the nurse leader, versus maybe the leader of the medical group, which at this point, they named Team Health as the group that is providing the services to the hospital. I think that, and let's talk a little bit about that, because they kind of got into that, but most people don't understand that all the people that are working in the hospital do not necessarily report directly to that hospital leadership, the hospital president. Who wants to talk a little about that?
I guess that'll be me, huh? So I guess making it as simple as possible. Traditionally in the emergency medicine arena, we traditionally as physicians have not been employed by the hospital. So think of it like, you own a boutique, you have a store, and you want to worry about inventory and what you're selling in the store, but you don't want to run the cash register. You just want to worry about your inventory. So you hire another company to bring in people to work the store while you take care of inventory and things coming in and how the store looks and all those things. That's essentially how we operate. So the hospital takes care of itself, be it, hospital finance, nursing staff, equipment, things of that nature. And then physician staffing typically is outsourced to another company. In this case, it's Team Health, who again, we are not a part of. And so Team Health will then have their own, not hierarchy, what's the word I'm looking for? Structure, leadership structure, starting from staff physicians to site medical directors, to regional medical directors, to, division directors and so forth. And through that, we will then communicate with hospital administration, and the two teams who are separate but equal will work together to help the hospital function. So I think what you see here is a disconnect between what hospital team and what physician staffing team thinks is necessary or needed in this particular department. And so when Team Health, and I'm assuming Team Health can't force Ascension to do anything. They can suggest, they can say, these are the things we want. But because it is Ascension's hospital, it is their baby, it is their business, it is their financial makeup, they can decide what they deem necessary and unnecessary as far as running their department or staffing on the hospital side. And that's where the two are not communicating well. Does that make sense? In my head, it makes sense. Out loud, I'm not sure.
It makes sense, but they can also, on another thing is that Dr. Andrews, you're correct. But what they also can do is, let's say that they're, like we said, it's Team Health. But if they say, okay, this group of 20 to 30 physicians have just walked out, therefore, we need you to send another 20 or 30. Team Health can say, well, we don't actually have another 20 or 30, but the hospital itself can say, okay, then we're going to go to another agency and have them send us some temporary staff until we can get this all together, knocked out. Yes. And so sometimes that happens. And then when that also happens, you can have two different vendors with a different rule of thought and how they structure their clients. So then that becomes a whole nother uphill, because now you don't only have one vendor that you're working with, you may have 2 to 3 because of the walkout.
True.
Very, very good point. Very, very good point. I think another area where there could be some disconnect. So we've kind of talked about the hospital versus the medical group that's employing the physicians. Sometimes even between the leader on the ground, really the local leader, versus, as Dr. Andrews talked about, some of the higher up leaders on the medical group side, sometimes they don't see eye to eye. And part of that might be the medical group's goal is to gain business of hospitals. So if a hospital puts out and says, hey, we need physicians. Now, brand new hospital, we need any physician we can get, please come. We're willing to listen to any medical group, any maybe local physician group. Come on in, let's hear what you've got to say and how you're going to help us take great care of our patients. And that's reasonable for a new hospital. There are not a lot of new hospitals being created, right? So a lot of these hospitals already exist. And the reason that they may say, hey, maybe we should look at somebody else, goes back to what Danielle talked about, is, they are also responsible financially for what's happening in their health system. So there are reasons why a hospital may have a group and then say, you know what, we're not getting what we want out of this. Maybe it's too costly of service. Maybe the service isn't great. Maybe you keep bringing us these people that we don't feel are competent to take care of our patients. So we want to look elsewhere. There are a bunch of different reasons. Those are probably the most common reasons why a hospital might say, you know what, let's go out there and find somebody else. So if I have a medical group and I'm looking for a hospital to come and put all my docs into and start making some money, because the hospital is going to pay this medical group to provide the service, I may try to come in and be the lowest dollar group that I can be for the hospital, because in my mind, that's going to make it more likely that I'm going to get the business, right? Just like any other aspect of really that buyer, seller, supply, demand. So I'm going to be the cheapest. I'm going to go in there. Hey, they were asking 200,000. We only want 100. We only want 150. And again, depending on the hospital and where they are and why they're making this decision, may think, wow, 100,000, that's half of what we were doing. What could we do with that money? Now we can get that new MRI. Now we can go buy X, Y, or Z. So yes, we'll take it. So now new company is in. They're asking for half of what the old company asked for, regardless of whether they were good or bad. But sometimes that's hard to guarantee, because at the end of the day, we all still want quality care. And so if we're going with the lowest dollar amount, if they are not able to provide that quality care, we as the hospital, we as the community are still in trouble. And sometimes we see this play out as well.
Definitely.
That's true.
Yeah, I think in this scenario, it's hard because we're not a part of, their inner workings to know what's happening. The only thing that we do know is what we hear from the staff that are outside, and what they're saying is what you hear from, I would dare to say 90% of the emergency rooms that I've come across in the, 12 to 15 years I've been doing this. And that is, staffing is always an issue, because, the older nurses and physicians are retiring. They're tired. And this has become more of a problem since the pandemic. I think the pandemic really did a number on the workforce in healthcare. I know, I've spoken about some of the things that I experienced during the pandemic. And, I think if you would have asked me how long, or if I would feel the way that I feel pre-pandemic, my answers would be very different. Because those experiences are very trying. And I think it's important for hospital administration systems, for physician staffing administration systems to take those things into account and start taking care of their workforce. Like, Dr. J alluded to, when we don't care for our workforce, they cannot render good care. When they are overworked, understaffed, underfed, sleep deprived, they cannot do their job to the best of their ability. I think this is just being, facetious, because I was messing with one of my residents the other day. But I can literally say in the 12 years that I've been in the Houston market, I've never had a job where I had a dedicated lunch break, ever.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I don't. I eat when I can eat. I pee when I can pee. And everything else is just in between. And it's crazy when you say it out loud to people who are not in the healthcare system. But I think that, the world around us don't realize that. And administration doesn't realize it. When I say I don't have a lunch break time, they say, well, Dr. Andrews, come to me on your lunch. And I'm like, well, when is that? Because I'm scheduled to work from 6 to 5. I don't have a lunch break. And the moment I go to shovel some food in my mouth, here comes an ambulance with somebody who needs an intubation. Well, I'm done. My lunch is done. And you multiply that by 120, 140. You got some physicians working upwards of 180 hours a month. That's a lot. It's a lot to carry. That's a lot of time where you're always feeling under the gun. And so I think it's really important for these hospital administration teams and staffing teams to listen to their staff, the people who are at the bedside, the boots on the ground, to understand that what they're going through is, not to be dramatic, but it is war. COVID was like literally Baghdad every day. I mean, I can tell you how many times I called Carol and I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? How did we get here? And you feel like nobody hears you, nobody sees you, because everyone else got to shelter themselves. Meanwhile, you feel like, administration is yelling from their ivory tower that you need to do this better. And it's like, well, what else can I do? And that's what I hear. And as a leader, I never want my staff to feel unappreciated or that they don't have a voice to say, hey, this is not okay. How do we fix this?
I think those are excellent points. And again, right, it's easy to say, well, hire more staff, duh. Yeah. Because I'm sure Danielle can think of 10 reasons why that may not be the best answer. So really it comes down to the little things. I think Dr. Andrews, you said it best, is making sure your staff feels appreciated, that they, as Dr. Jordan will definitely tell us, have all of their needs met so that they can meet the needs of others. And we're not talking about, a 2-hour lunch break or, bringing us steak dinners every day or anything like that. Can I have a chance to run to the restroom and eat some food? That's the type of stuff that we're talking about. But adding more people absolutely costs more money. And I think that's one thing that we in our group of healthcare advisors and administrators and leaders from all different angles, what we do well is help organizations identify where they can make that money back, right? And some of it is efficiencies. Some of it is optimization of current processes. Some of it is decreasing waste. And I know our surgical colleagues would always say, there's so many things that happen in the operating room, in the PACU. There's so much wasted resources that if you decrease that, you're saving a little bit of money. And so that's one thing that we definitely don't want to trivialize, the fact that healthcare is tough. I know we all talked about just last week the new information from Walmart that they are kind of pulling back from a lot of the advances they've made in healthcare, including their telehealth and their clinics, because it's hard. It's really hard. And I know I was talking to someone last week when this information came out, and they were like, these are big businesses. If you can run Walmart, you can run Chick-fil-A, you can run Amazon, you can run Google, you can run, Microsoft, like these outside of Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is not trying to get into healthcare as far as I know. Although they kind of do it actually during the COVID. There were health systems that went to Chick-fil-A to understand how they so quickly got people through their line and took that back when they were creating their own COVID vaccination centers. So fun fact that Chick-fil-A kind of has help. But some of these others, they're behemoths. They're making lots and lots of money. They've figured it out. And they're looking at healthcare like, oh my gosh, every single person can be a patient. Even people who are not yet people can be a patient. Like, that's awesome. We have pathologists. People who have passed are still our patients. Mm-hmm. So what better business is that? Like, you're always going to be needed. So I think from the outside, I can see that being like, wow, that's a no-brainer. This is awesome. Let's get in. Let's make this money. But when you get into healthcare, you realize it doesn't function like the rest of the world, at least not in this country and not in many countries, honestly. You don't have to wait months and months to get your money back. If I go to Walmart, I'm going to pay today, or I'm not leaving with my item. That's not how it works here. You're not begging and pleading people. They're not sending people to collections. They're not charging one thing in the store and then expecting to get less than that by some percentage. Like that is how healthcare works. It is totally different. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think for us who are in it, that's normal. And so really to be able to win in the game of healthcare, because we all absolutely see opportunities for improvement, and decreasing waste and optimization and increasing efficiency. But it really takes people who have been in it, who have done it, who have been angered by it,
Mhm.
who refuse to accept that this is how it has to be. That is honestly how this company came about, is we are all people who have done this job for quite some time and said, this doesn't make sense. We could be doing so much better. How can we put our heads together and work for systems who really want to improve? And I think that's the fun part about what we do. But any other thoughts on outsiders coming in and how we can't just say, yeah, just hire more doctors and nurses and let's keep it moving?
No, I think it's a slippery slope. I think in any industry, you've got good people and you've got bad people. And when you start to mill out, or, and this comes from, way back in the gap when you talk about people picketing from the auto industry and things like that, when you bring in these, and the term is so derogatory, I'm not going to use that term. When you bring in new people to run while you've got, your tried and true, on the picket line, they may not be as trained.
Sure.
They may not be as compassionate. They may not be as efficient. And when that happens, mistakes will happen. And again, the person who suffers the most is the patient. But these hospital systems and these staffing systems have to also understand that once the patient suffers, it will come back to you tenfold, because it ain't coming back.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the reasons why Walmart and some of these large conglomerates get out, because I can go, if I live in a small town and Walmart is the biggest grocery store, that's my only option, is them or the Piggly Wiggly. So chances are
Piggly Wiggly.
Walmart, right? But in healthcare, I don't have to, right? But not only do I not have to, patients will choose to just not return to healthcare. And that's a dangerous game to play, not only for the healthcare system, but for the patient. And we shouldn't want that to happen. So, for these healthcare systems, you want to hire people to just come in and fill the seat. We always say you want a warm body. You don't want a warm body. You want someone who is invested into your system, who's invested into the community, who wants to see us win. And when we can have those mature, open, and honest conversations on both sides of the table, and evaluate the language that we've used previously, and understand that what worked for us in 2015 ain't gonna work for us in 2024, then we can start to move forward. And I think that that's where we can, again, help you have those conversations, because like Dr. Wellaway and like Dr. J, I've been on both sides of that table. And a lot of our colleagues have not. And so they don't speak the language, and it's hard for them to understand what the other is saying without there being anger and resentment. And then you stay on that hamster wheel and nothing changes. And it's time for a change.
So true.
Yeah. And I also think that healthcare systems have to understand, as you said, Dr. Andrews, is that you don't want your patients to leave or feel I have to go somewhere else. Because the one thing about healthcare systems, we're already competing with the urgent cares of the world, and we're already competing with the small pop-up access to health and those quick go-in clinics and come out. There's nothing wrong with that. So I will never say that. But the thing is that we saw from prior to the pandemic to during the pandemic to after the pandemic, there was a slew of individuals that came to the ER because they needed to get there and they needed that. But then we also saw that downward spiral that we're starting to see that they've moved away, and like, I'd rather go to urgent care because I don't have to wait as long, or I can go and I can make the appointment and then they'll text me and say you're ready. And so I think that healthcare systems have to be more, I would say, technically savvy. We have to get better at what is it that is going to assist the patient? How can we get these diseases that, because we know there's a lot more complex diseases that are coming to the hospitals that we hadn't seen 5 or even 10 years ago. So people are coming through the ER with those complex diseases, and we need, and that's the ones that the ED should be focusing on, not the little sniffles and the running of the eyes. And yes, those can go to urgent care. Unfortunately, yeah, you will lose some of that volume, but you do need to have those larger and those more complex diseases and be able to make sure we are sufficiently giving them the quality of care that they need, so they don't feel like I'm going to walk out. Because one thing as administrators and finance people, we're looking at left without being seen, left against medical advice, and those percentage rates are quadruple where they were at 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Those are the individuals we need to focus on and bring them back and make sure, please don't leave. We're getting to you. And that's what it is that we all know, anybody have been sick, we're frustrated already. So you're sitting there and you're like, they're taking too long. And instead of them saying, okay, this is the section of individuals that have like the quick and easy things that we can do, and look at the section of individuals that have the more complex. And that's where the separation needs to be. And how can we sufficiently push them through the ED appropriately?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point too, as far as looking at appropriate care for the appropriate setting. And I feel like that's an area that has still not been mastered, looking at generally within healthcare. Everyone doesn't need to go to the ED. Everyone shouldn't go to urgent care. And I think that's another area of opportunity, really, to better educate the community as when should I do this and when should I do that? When is it appropriate? What's appropriate? Because that saves time. And that's more efficient for all locations.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Yeah.
Dr. J, what are you thinking over there?
Wow. Well, I'm just, there's just so many different thoughts, and I'm just thinking about, just the communication, and that, that people are not, there's so many different things, but, I just keep thinking, and it's so awesome that this month is Mental Health Awareness Month and Hospital Week.
Yes.
And emergency medicine, like all
Yes.
in the month of May. And so mental health awareness, and what Dr. Andrew said is that the pandemic, people that have been in healthcare and during these past 4 years or so have seen a lot, have been through a lot, and they're still dealing with some of those things that haven't even really been processed, and like things that they are still carrying from those past times. And when people left, medicine and didn't come back, and so being even more short-staffed. We were short-staffed before 2020. And then, so now if they're making more cuts, doing more things, the people who stayed or who came into the field during the height of that are like, is this what it is? Is this how it's going to be? Is this what I signed up for? So there's a lot of mental, mental health things, questions, and again, trying to stay in it for the patients. I don't know anybody who would say, I'd rather take a pizza party or, a potluck over a better designed system. They say, take that money for the pizzas and let's sit down and hammer out how we can do this better. And I think people would, most people in healthcare would say that would be much more money well spent. I don't skip the pizza. Let's figure this out. I think there's also something to be said for, I'm thinking about those people that were walking around outside of that hospital, is sometimes we need to listen to the grumpies.
Yes.
Because sometimes those people that are grumpy, or the patients that are in the ER who are walking out, like Danielle said, we need to find them and say, why did you leave? What happened? Because listening to the grumpies, they may have an option or a solution in their complaints. If you notice a trend, you keep hearing the same things, then that's already kind of giving you some pointers of this is the areas that we need to fix. We can't keep anybody because this continues to be a problem. We can't keep our patients because this is the option. This is what their experience has been in the emergency room. This is their experience when they get admitted to the hospital. Listen to the grumpies and figure out, what are we missing? Why aren't we where are we falling short and where can we get better? Because everything is a continuous improvement. And being willing to sit there and listen to that. And then the other part too is like us and how Advantage got started. Maybe we were some of the grumpies and we said, you know what, we need to do something, because when you take those folks who have been unhappy or they've had a not so great experience, but then to turn around and empower them and say, okay, so well, how would you do this? Not just complain, but okay, so what are we going to do about it? Because they may have some of the best ideas is when we listen to those people who are outside of the building or who are in the community and are saying like, oh, don't go there because this is what happened, or I'll never work there again because this is how I was treated, or, this is what I saw happen and we had a near miss and because we didn't have enough people. So, or the administrators who were like, I can't work there. Why can't the administration work there? Because that could have been the person who could have solved some of the financial issues and kept them in the black, but they walked out. And so that knowledge and that brain trust is a missed opportunity. And so that's what I'm thinking about as far as, the whole system and like the individual, but how we can all try to work together.
Absolutely.
No, yeah. Dr. J, when you were talking, I was sitting there thinking, and I was like, missing out on that. I think watching those people picket, remember that they have family members.
Yes.
They have moms, dads, sisters, brothers, cousins who all need health care. And when you're worried about how your loved one is doing or if they're sick, if I'm in DFW area and somebody gets sick, I'm on Carol's phone. Hey, where do I go? Right? But if I'm one of those providers, they're not going to bring their family member to where they work. That's lost revenue.
Yeah.
Immediate, that's lost, not only, but also cyclical, because why wouldn't they come back? They're not going to come for their outpatient procedures. They're not going to come for their inpatient things. They don't want to come to have their babies. That's easy.
True.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
True.
And we don't even know. And see, that's the thing is we only know what they put on the news. We do not know the prior conversations, the prior issues, or anything outside of what was the tipping point. Like that particular day, what was the tipping point? Because like you said, all of you, Dr. Wellaway, Dr. Andrew, Dr. J, you all did not go to school and get this education just so you could say, well, one day when I get tired, I'm gonna walk out. No, it was because you wanted to take care of patients. And I think it's like we have to understand what can make a group. It wasn't just one person,
Right.
it was several groups, and it was several people that took a lot of time and effort to say, this is it. And I agree with you. Oh yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, I'm walking out. So it took some effort. And like I said, what boiling point took them to that, and it was like, okay, enough is enough, and today is the day.
Yeah, it had to have been festering for a while for them to get there. And that's why I say that communication key is, I always tell my son, like, I know you hear me, but are you listening to what I said? You can hear me all day long and it sounds like womp, 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 womp. And I'm like, but are you listening? Because if you're listening to me, then you can say, yes, mommy, I'm listening. I can do A, B, and C, or I can't do C because, D, E, and F is happening. And I can say, okay, well, then let's figure out how we can get C done. Right.
Yes.
And that's the thing. But you are so right. I wonder what the tipping point was, or was it just the day that they was like, okay, I didn't have enough of this shit. Oh, sorry. But you know what I mean?
Nikki has taken us to the next level.
But it's one of those things where we're looking at the glass half full, and we just don't know everything that has come to that point, because it had to been a lot, and it had to be, and as you said, Dr. Andrews, these individuals have families, I mean, and as you said, when you're working in the ED, if you don't work, you don't get paid. And so that means, how we don't even know how long they walked, or how long this going on. Is it still going on? But it's a shame that it's at that point. And I just never thought I'd see it in my day, where a group of doctors would walk out and do that. But it's something to see that, and it makes you say, well, you know what, they're standing for something. My mom always say, if you don't stand for anything, you better stand for something.
Yeah, I think this may be a tipping point for the entire industry in the US. I'm interested to see what's going to happen moving forward, if they can come to a resolution, and specifically what's going to happen in that Midwest East Coast area, because that's where most of these labor unions for physicians and nurses exist. Most of them don't exist in the southern states. So I'm interested to see what happens and how this will domino into surrounding hospital systems, and if they'll take notice. And how that will change practices, moving forward. I know that it definitely made me sit up a little straighter in my chair, because what are we doing?
That's a great point. And if not more unions and physician unions in other places, it is putting the fear in administrators that, oh my goodness, they're getting together and this could come here. I've been hearing this from multiple colleagues around the country and in this area that has not been inundated with unions, that, there's a lot of fear around that. And, I say, don't be afraid. Just listen.
Right.
You don't have to guess what's going to prevent these type of things. We are open. We'll have conversations. Again, not every physician, not every nurse, not every healthcare provider can have those open, honest, professional conversations. That's where Advantage can come in and help bridge that gap. But usually there's someone that can say, look, here's the real issue. Here's the top issue. Let's just work with number one. We can't fix everything. Where should we start? But again, to all of you all's points, really coming together, both sides, all sides have a seat at the table and talking through things before it gets to this point. Again, we are not involved in this situation of this walkout in Detroit. We have not had any conversations with that hospital. We are not presuming to know what exactly happened. We're watching the same, and that's why we played the clip, so you all can see what we saw. We are, though, happy to assist in that organization, either on the physician nursing side or the healthcare organization side, because that's what we do. And we are very lucky and blessed to have a group of professionals who, this is really our job, is to help bring all sides together for the benefit of the patient, the healthcare providers, the organizations, and the community. So with that, we will end this talk. I feel like we could go on for hours, but I would like to thank Danielle Davis Hurd, our financial healthcare finance administrative guru, Dr. Nicole Andrews, emergency medicine, leadership and coaching, and Dr. Allison Jordan, and all of her many jobs as 3 or 4 different types of physician in one, coaching, and bringing in that culinary medicine aspect of things too. Thank you all, ladies, as always. And everyone, please catch us next time on the Advantage Insights podcast. You can find us on our YouTube channel. We are on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We do have a website, advantagehcsolutions.com. So if you are a healthcare organization, and are looking for some assistance in whether it's communication, team building, staff development, that operational efficiency that we talked about, give us a call. Thank you for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.